My name is Robert. I'm 75 years old, and for 40 years I ran the heart-lung machines that kept patients alive during surgery. But last Sunday, sitting at my own dining table, I watched my family flatline. My son Tyler slammed his fist down, shaking the fine porcelain I bought, and screamed, "Give my wife your room or get out!" He shouted this command in a $4.5 million house that I had paid for, demanding I move into the damp basement to satisfy his wife's greed. If you believe respect is a two-way street, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because what I did next changed everything. I just nodded, grabbed my bag, and walked out the front door without a fight. They popped champagne that night, celebrating that the clueless old man was finally gone. They had no idea I had already called my lawyer. They didn't know that by signing a loan application behind my back, they had just triggered Clause 4.B of a land lease they never bothered to read. A clause that meant in 60 days they wouldn't just be losing the master bedroom, they'd be losing the entire house. To understand the sudden cardiac arrest of a family, you have to look at the patient history. The dinner table rattled. My fork jumped against the fine porcelain, a tiny, nervous sound that echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. I kept my eyes down, staring at the roast chicken. For 40 years, I worked as a perfusionist. I ran the heart-lung bypass machines during open-heart surgeries. My job was to keep the blood flowing, to monitor the pressure, to keep the patient alive while their own heart was stopped. You learn to sense changes in pressure before the monitors even beep. Sitting at this table, the pressure was critical. The air in the room felt heavy, like a storm was about to break inside the dining room walls. Then the rupture happened. My son Tyler stood up. His chair scraped against the marble floor, a screeching sound that made me wince. I looked up. His face was a dark shade of red. The veins in his neck were bulging, pulsing with a rhythm that was too fast, too angry. He slammed his fist onto the table. The wine glasses shook. "Give my wife your room," he screamed. Spittle flew from his mouth, landing on the polished wood. I didn't move. I fell into my old habits. Stay calm, watch the vitals, don't panic. But my heart hammered against my ribs. "Or get out of here right now," Tyler shouted. His voice cracked, high and desperate. It wasn't a request, it was a command. I froze. My hand gripped my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. I forced myself to breathe. I looked around the room. The floor-to-ceiling glass windows reflected the darkness of the night. The cold marble floors shone under the chandelier. This was a $4.5 million house. A house I had paid for. A house I bought so my son would never have to struggle. "Get out," he shouted again, louder this time. "Get out of the house I paid for." He didn't pay for it. I did. But looking at him now, I didn't see the boy I taught to ride a bike. I saw a stranger. A desperate, angry stranger. I shifted my gaze to Jessica, my daughter-in-law. She sat across from me, perfectly still. She didn't look scared. She didn't look shocked by her husband's outburst. She was smiling. It was a small, cold smile. She lifted her glass of white wine and took a slow, deliberate sip. Her eyes locked onto mine. She watched me like a scientist studying a bug under a microscope, waiting to see if it would squirm. I realized then that this wasn't an argument. This was a surgery, and I was the one being cut out. I stood up slowly. My knees popped, a dry, cracking sound. I felt every one of my 75 years settle into my bones. The grief washed over me, not for the house, but for the loss of the son I thought I knew. "Okay," I said softly. My voice was calm. It surprised even me. I didn't fight. I didn't yell. In my line of work, you don't argue with a failing system. You bypass it. "Okay," I repeated. I walked to the front door. My shoes clicked on the cold stone. I grabbed my small leather bag from the entry table. I didn't look back. I stepped out into the night. The heavy front door clicked shut behind me. The sound was final. Standing on the porch, the night air was cool. Through the thick wood of the door, I heard a muffled sound. Glass clinking against glass. Laughter. They were celebrating. They thought the clueless old man was finally gone. They thought they had won the game. They thought I was just a senile old retiree who would wander off into the dark. They had no idea. I reached into my pocket. My hand brushed against the cold metal of my smartphone. I didn't call a taxi. I had already made a call 10 minutes ago, under the table. I had called my lawyer. They didn't know about the contract. They didn't know about the specific terms of the land lease. And they certainly didn't know about Clause 4.B. I looked back at the house one last time. It glowed like a jewel in the night. It was beautiful. and they were about to lose everything. To understand the sudden cardiac arrest of a family, you have to look at the patient history. You have to rewind the tape to see where the blockage began. It didn't start with the screaming tonight. It started 8 months ago. The house was different then. My wife Martha had only been gone a few weeks. Without her, the 6,000 square feet of marble and glass felt less like a home and more like a museum I was haunting. I was a ghost in my own hallways, drifting through the rooms we had designed together. I'm Robert. I spent my life building skyscrapers, designing structures that could withstand wind shears and earthquakes, but I never built anything to withstand the silence of a house after your partner of 50 years is gone. It began with a Sunday dinner. The air in the dining room was colder than my iced tea. The HVAC system hummed a low, constant drone, masking the lack of conversation. We were eating roast chicken. The clinking of silverware was the only language we were speaking. Jessica put her fork down. Click. The sound was sharp, deliberate. A surgeon asking for a scalpel. I looked up. Jessica is 42. She wears ambition like expensive perfume, cloying and impossible to ignore. She sat with her back perfectly straight, her eyes clear and sharp. They were eyes like ice, devoid of the warmth Martha used to have. Bob, she started. She never called me Dad. It was always Bob, a professional courtesy, not a familial one. Tyler and I have been talking. She glanced at my son. Tyler was staring at his plate, pushing a pea around with his fork. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing candy, terrified of the punishment, but greedy for the sugar. We think it's time we optimize the space, Jessica said. Optimize. My stomach tightened. In architecture, you use that word when you want to tear down a load-bearing wall to make a room look bigger. In families, it usually means someone is about to lose something they love. Optimize? I asked, wiping my mouth with a napkin. The house is huge, Jessica. There are 4 empty bedrooms, upstairs. Jessica gave Tyler a nudge under the table. I saw the tablecloth ripple. A sharp, directed kick. A command. Tyler cleared his throat. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. What she means, Dad, he mumbled, his voice thick with reluctance. Is that, well, Jessica needs your room. There it was, the first incision. The master suite. The room I had shared with Martha for 20 years. The room where she died holding my hand. It was the only sanctuary I had left. I tried to keep my voice steady, to keep the monitor from flatlining. What for? I asked. The upstairs is perfect for a guest room or an office. Why the master? For the baby, Jessica said. The words hung in the air. She placed a manicured hand on her flat stomach. Her nails were painted a deep blood red, stark against her pale skin. I froze. A baby? My heart, that tired old engine, softened. A grandchild? A new pulse in this dead house. You're pregnant, Jessica? I asked, my voice rising with genuine hope. That's wonderful. Why didn't you say anything? Well, I'm not yet, she said quickly, waving her hand dismissively as if swatting away a fly. But we're trying. She took a sip of water, her eyes narrowing slightly. The stress of not having the nursery ready, it's affecting my fertility, Bob. I need a calm environment. I need to prepare. The feng shui in the master suite is the only thing that works for conception. I looked at her, then at Tyler. The logic was thin, like a wire stretched to the breaking point. But the 2 rooms upstairs are perfect, I argued gently. They had the best light. No, Jessica snapped. The suite veneer cracked, revealing the steel beneath. I can't be climbing stairs all day. It's impractical. I need a room on the main floor. Your room is the only one that works. I looked at my son. I was pleading with my eyes, begging him to remember who paid for the roof over his head, who paid for the car in the driveway, who paid for the college degree he barely used. Tyler, you agreed to this? I asked. The ground floor suite was the arrangement. I paid for this house, Tyler. It was built for your mother and me. He finally looked up. His eyes were wet, panicked. He looked trapped. The silence stretched. It was heavy, suffocating. Jessica sighed, a dramatic, loud exhale of impatience. So, I asked, my voice quieting to a whisper, where exactly did you plan on putting me? Tyler cleared his throat again. He looked at Jessica for courage. found none, and looked back at his plate. We already cleared out the storage room, he stammered. In the basement. He tried to smile, but it looked like a grimace. It's actually pretty cozy, Dad. We can put a big TV down there. It'll be your own private space. A man cave. The basement. It was a finished basement, technically, but it was underground. Small, high windows that let in only a sliver of gray light. Concrete walls behind the drywall. It was cold, damp. They weren't optimizing space. They were burying me. No, I said. I put my napkin on the table. I'm not moving to the basement. The agreement was the master suite. I am not a piece of furniture you can put in storage. Jessica's eyes flashed with pure fury. She turned that look on Tyler. It was a clear, silent command. Handle him, or I will handle you. That was when the shouting started. That was the inciting incident. That was the moment the aneurysm burst. Tyler stood up, his face red, and delivered the ultimatum that sent me into the night. That night, I moved into the concrete tomb. I carried my things down the narrow wooden stairs. One box of clothes, my shaving kit, a picture of Martha. The basement smelled of damp cardboard and neglect, that specific, musty scent of things the world has forgotten. There was a twin mattress on the floor in the corner. No frame, just a rectangle of foam on the cold concrete. I lay down. The ceiling was low, pressing down on me. I stared up at the exposed pipes and wires running along the joists. In the hospital, we call the basement the morgue. It's where everything ends up eventually. Lying there in the dark, listening to the furnace hum like a dying animal. I felt like I was already in a coffin. I didn't sleep. I just listened to the footsteps above me. Thump, thump. My son and his wife, walking on the floors I paid for, living the life I built, while I lay in the dark. The next morning, the air in the basement was stale. I needed coffee. I needed oxygen. I walked up the stairs, my joints stiff from the cold floor. When I reached the main hallway, the light was blinding. The morning sun flooded through the windows, mocking the darkness I had just left. I passed my old room, the master suite. The door was wide open. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of fresh chemicals. 2 men in white coveralls were inside. They were painting the walls, but they weren't painting them blue or pink or soft yellow. They were painting them a deep, aggressive charcoal gray. I stopped. I leaned against the doorframe, my heart rate picking up. Massive panels of mirror were leaning against the far wall. Floor-to-ceiling sheets of glass. This didn't look like a nursery. It looked like a gym. "Jessica," I called out. She emerged from the kitchen, looking annoyed that I had surfaced. She was wearing a sleek, tight black outfit. She held a rolled-up yoga mat under her arm. "What is it, Bob?" she asked, not breaking her stride. "I don't understand," I said, pointing a shaking finger at the open door. "I thought this was for the baby. Those walls, they're black." Jessica stopped. She looked at the room, then back at me. She let out a laugh, a high, sharp sound that had no humor in it. "Oh, it is for the baby," she said, smoothing her hair. "But you have to prepare the vessel first, Bob." "The vessel? Me?" she said, pointing to herself. "I need a calm, zen space to get my mind right for conception. Yoga is amazing for fertility. I need to focus on my breathing." She smiled, that same predatory smile from the dinner table. "It's my studio now, Bob. Namaste." She walked past me, entering the room that used to be mine, the room where I held my dying wife, and closed the door. She was telling me this yoga studio was a nursery. She was telling me up was down, and black was white. The insult was worse than the screaming. It was a dismissal of my reality. I felt sick. A physical nausea rolled in my stomach. I needed air. I walked out the back door into the garden. The morning air was crisp. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my hands. "Morning, Robert." I jumped. Sarah Jenkins was standing at the waist-high fence that separated our properties. Sarah is 60, with sharp eyes that miss nothing in this neighborhood. She was wearing a sun hat and pruning her roses with violent precision. Snip, snip, she lowered her sunglasses and looked at me. She looked at the basement window, then back at my face. "Moving rooms?" she asked. She knew. Sarah always knew. "Just Rearranging, I lied. I was too ashamed to tell her the truth, that my son had banished me to the cellar. Making space for new things. Sarah didn't buy it. She stopped snipping. She leaned over the fence, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Be careful, Robert, she said. Careful? Why? I saw her yesterday, Sarah said. She nodded toward the house. On the patio. While you were at the pharmacy. Who? Jessica. She was drinking wine, Robert. A whole bottle of Chardonnay. I froze. The world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. Wine, I repeated. And smoking, Sarah added. I saw the smoke. She gave me a long, pitying look. If she's pregnant, Robert, it's a miracle. Or a crime. My mind raced. Pregnant women don't drink wine. They don't smoke. And they certainly don't paint nurseries black for yoga. The diagnosis was wrong. I had been treating the situation like a family dispute. But it wasn't a dispute. It was a con. The second night in the basement was worse than the first. The cold wasn't just in the air, it was in the concrete floor, seeping up through the thin mattress and settling into my joints. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. In the silence, my mind drifted back to the operating room. There's a specific sound a heart monitor makes when a patient starts to destabilize, a frantic, irregular rhythm. Beep, 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 beep. It's the sound of a system failing. Lying there in the dark, I realized I was hearing that sound. But it wasn't a machine. It was my life. 2:00 a.m. The house above me was silent, or so I thought. Then I heard it, a vibration, a floorboard creaking directly above my head. Then a voice, low, muffled, but distinct. I sat up, my back groaned in protest. I shouldn't investigate. I should stay in my hole like a good, obedient old man. But the suspicion planted by Sarah Jenkins was blooming in my chest, a dark, thorny weed. I stood up. I didn't turn on the light. I navigated the basement by memory, my hands brushing against rough support beams. I reached the wooden stairs. I took the first step. Creak. I froze. I held my breath, listening. Silence. I took the second step. Then the third. I moved with the slow, agonizing caution of a thief in my own home. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A wild bird trapped in a cage. If they caught me creeping around, what would they say? That I was senile. That I was losing my mind. I reached the top of the stairs. The door to the hallway was cracked open just an inch. A sliver of golden light spilled through, slicing across the darkness of the stairwell. I pressed my ear near the crack. Jessica was in the living room. She was pacing. I could hear the soft pad of her bare feet on the hardwood. She was talking to someone on the phone. I told you it would work, she whispered. Her voice was sharp, excited. No, of course he bought it. He's ancient, honey. He doesn't question anything. She laughed. It was a cold, metallic sound that chilled me more than the basement ever could. He bought the whole, its temporary thing. Hook, line, and sinker. I gripped the doorframe. My knuckles turned white. I felt a wave of dizziness. Pregnant? She scoffed into the phone. Are you crazy? Do you have any idea what that would do to my body? No. God, no. The air left my lungs. The lie. The absolute, total betrayal. There was no baby. There was no grandchild. It was just a story, a weapon used to bludgeon an old man out of his room. I just needed the space, she continued. And I needed him out of the way. The poor old thing is down in the basement right now, right where he belongs, out of sight, out of mind. I closed my eyes. A single tear leaked out, hot and stinging. Now I finally have my studio, she said. And the rest, well, the rest is falling into place. She paused, listening to the person on the other end. Don't worry about Tyler, she said, her voice dropping to a dismissive purr. Trust me, I can handle him. He's so blindly in love with me, it's pathetic. He's desperate to keep me happy. She laughed again. He'd throw his own father into a volcano if I asked him to. He's weak. He always has been. I leaned my forehead against the cold wood of the door. My son, my boy. She didn't love him. She despised him. She saw him as a tool, a soft thing she could mold. Okay, she said, her tone shifting to business. Just make sure the funds are ready. I'm handling my end here, and I'll see you next week. Kisses. She hung up. I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence return to the house. Make sure the funds are ready. What funds? My mind, sharpened by decades of complex problem solving, snapped into focus. The grief was still there, heavy and crushing, but something else was rising to meet it. Cold, hard anger. She wasn't just taking my room. She wasn't just lying about a baby. She was planning something financial. I retreated down the stairs, moving backward into the dark. I sat on the edge of the miserable mattress. My hands were shaking, not from age, and not from cold. They were shaking with rage. I wasn't a perfusionist anymore. I was a detective, and I had just found the first clue to a crime scene. The next week was a blur of feigned obedience and sharp observation. I played the part of the beaten old man perfectly. I spent my days in the garden or the basement, keeping my head down, but my eyes were open. I became a sentry. Every morning I sat by the front window, hidden behind the heavy velvet drapes, watching the street. I was waiting for the postman. In medicine, you look for markers in the blood. In life, you look for paper trails. Tuesday, 11:45 a.m. The mail truck sputtered to a stop. The carrier walked up the driveway, a stack of white envelopes in his hand. He shoved them into the slot. Thwack. I moved fast. I waited until the truck drove away. Then I went to the foyer. I scooped up the pile before Jessica could come down from her yoga. Bills, junk mail, a catalog. And then I saw it, a thick envelope from Bank of America, marked urgent, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Tyler Anderson. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. I tucked the letter under my sweater and went to the kitchen. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. I didn't turn it to boil, that would whistle, and a whistle would bring Jessica. I set it to a low simmer. I waited. The water began to steam. I held the envelope over the spout. The heat softened the glue. My hands were steady. I used a butter knife to gently pry the flap open. I pulled out the folded paper. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, we regret to inform you, application for home equity line of credit denied. I scanned down the page. My eyes widened. Reason for denial. Insufficient collateral. Applicant does not hold title to the land. Requested amount, $500,000. I stared at the number. The zeros swam before my eyes. $500,000. They were trying to take out a second mortgage on my house. I leaned against the counter, the paper trembling in my hand. I had given Tyler $3.5 million when I sold my company. I built this house for another $4.5 million. That was $8 million of value, and they were broke. They were hemorrhaging money. They had bled the accounts dry, and now, like a desperate surgeon, they were trying to harvest organs from the patient to keep going. They were trying to borrow against the house. But they had made a mistake. A fatal, arrogant mistake. They forgot who owned the dirt under the foundation. I carefully resealed the envelope with a dab of glue stick. I placed it back on the pile in the foyer. Then I went to the basement and picked up my phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called. Years. James Miller. My lawyer for 40 years. The shark in the suit. James, I said when he picked up, I need you to pull the Anderson family trust file. Specifically, the Westlake property agreement. Robert, James's voice was groggy. He was probably on his boat. Is everything okay? You sound focused. I'm not okay, James. I need you to look at the land lease. The lease? That thing is ancient history, Bob. We wrote that up when you built the place. It's ironclad. Look at clause 4.b, I said. I heard the rustling of papers on the other end. Silence stretched for a moment. Then James let out a low whistle. Clause 4b, he muttered. Restrictions on encumbrance. Lessee shall not create, assume, or suffer to exist any mortgage, pledge, or lien on the property without the express written consent of the lessor. And if they do? I asked, though I already knew the answer. If they even attempt to encumber the property, James read, his voice gaining interest, it constitutes a material breach of contract. They applied for a second mortgage, James. Bank of America denied it, but they signed the application. Is that an attempt? James laughed. It was a dry, appreciative sound. Robert Anderson, he said. You sly, magnificent old fox. Yes. Signing the application is an intent to encumber. It is a clear violation. A total breach. So, I asked, what does that mean for the lease? It means, James said, his voice dropping to a serious legal tone, that you can terminate the 99-year agreement immediately. You can evict the structure. Evict the structure? Section 4C, James recited. Upon termination for breach, the lessee has 60 calendar days to remove their property, the house from the land. If they fail to remove it, the entire structure defaults to the landowner. I finished. To me, exactly. They forfeit the house. All $4.5 million of it. My heart pounded. This was the bypass. This was the way around the blockage. Prepare the papers, James, I said. Draw them up. Shall I send them over? No, I said. Not yet. I need to be sure. I need to know why they need the money. I need to know what Jessica is really planning. Robert, James warned, don't play games with this. It's not a game, James, I said, looking at the ceiling where my son was walking. It's a diagnostic. I need to find the source of the infection before I cut it out. I hung up. I stood there in the dark basement. The power had shifted. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I held the scalpel, and I was about to operate. I couldn't stay in the basement. Not with what I knew. Staying meant exploding, and explosions are messy. I needed surgical precision. I needed to disappear so I could watch them clearly. I decided to leave. The next morning, I packed a single suitcase. I moved with a strange, detached calm. It was the same calm I used to feel when scrubbing in for a 12-hour procedure. The fear was there, buried deep, but my hands were steady. I walked into the kitchen. Jessica was drinking coffee, scrolling through her phone. Tyler was staring out the window, looking like a man waiting for a firing squad. Jessica, I said. She looked up, her face arranging itself into a mask of polite tolerance. Yes, Bob. I've been thinking, I said. You're right. I'm in the way here. I need to give you space. I paused for effect. I'm going to visit my cousin in Florida. He has a place near the Keys. I might stay a while. Jessica's face transformed. It was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. The relief was instantaneous and insulting. Florida? She beamed. Bob, that sounds amazing. You need the vitamin D. It'll be so good for your joints. Stay as long as you like, Dad, Tyler added. But unlike Jessica, his voice was heavy. He wouldn't look at me. He was relieved. Yes, but he was also ashamed. He was happy to see the evidence of his betrayal walk out the door. Take a month, Jessica practically chirped. Take 2. Don't worry about the house. We'll hold down the fort. I'm sure you will, I said. I picked up my bag, but before I turned to leave, I placed a thick hardcover book on the counter. It was a collection of vintage architectural photography. I found this in my things, I lied. I thought you might like it, Jessica. For your design inspiration, she looked at the book, surprised. Oh,
Thanks, Bob.
that's sweet. She didn't know that inside the spine of that book, nestled between the binding and the pages, was a high-definition camera lens, no bigger than a pinhead. My friend Marcus Thorne, a private investigator I'd known since the 80s, had lent it to me. Battery lasts a week, Marcus had said. Streams directly to the cloud, audio and video. Goodbye, I said. I walked out the door. I didn't look back. I drove away, but I didn't go to the airport. I didn't go to Florida. I drove 3 miles downtown and checked into the Four Seasons. I set up a command center on the mahogany desk. My laptop, a notepad, and a bottle of water. The room was quiet, insulated from the city noise. It felt like a sterile observation deck. I opened my laptop and logged into the secure server. The screen flickered black, then gray, then resolved into a crisp, wide-angle view of my kitchen. The audio crackled to life. Clink, clink. I watched. It was evening now. They were opening a bottle of champagne. Jessica was laughing. It was a sound I had never heard before. Genuine, uninhibited joy. She poured 2 glasses. To us, she said, raising her glass to the empty room. And to Florida, to Florida, to Florida, Tyler echoed. He sounded drunk already. May he stay there indefinitely, Jessica said, taking a long drink. She set the glass down and leaned against the counter, right next to the book I had left. Tyler, stop looking so miserable, she snapped. We won. He's gone. The coast is clear. I know, Tyler muttered. I feel bad, Jess. He looked so old. He is old, Tyler. That's the point. He doesn't need a house this big. It's a waste. She turned to face him, her expression hardening. Now listen to me. We need to move fast. The market in Westlake is insane right now. I already talked to the realtor. I leaned forward in my hotel chair. Realtor, this house will sell for $5, $2 million, easy, Jessica said. She was doing math in the air with her hands. We pay off the $1 million we owe in credit card debt and loans. That leaves us with $4.2 million clean cash. My breath hitched. They were selling my home, the home I built, the home I promised Martha I would keep in the family. And then, Tyler, Jessica smiled. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. We optimize, Tyler asked, blinking. We split it, she said. 2 to 1 million for me. 2 to 1 million for you. Split it, Tyler frowned. But we're a team, Jess. Why would we split it? Jessica placed her hand on his cheek. It looked affectionate, but I saw the way her thumb dug into his jaw. Because, sweetie, she purred. Then we get a divorce. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Tyler dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, shards of crystal exploding everywhere. He didn't even flinch. Divorce? He whispered. But the baby? The nursery? Jessica threw her head back and laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound. Oh, Tyler, grow up, she said. The baby was just a story, a narrative device. I needed that $500,000 loan to seed my business in California, but your father ruined our credit, so I couldn't get it. She stepped over the broken glass, closing the distance between them. So, plan B, she said. We sell the house. I take my money, and I move to LA alone. But Tyler was shaking. He looked like a man whose parachute had failed to open. You love me. I tolerate you, Tyler, she said coldly. You're useful, or you were. But let's be honest. You're a weak man. You let your wife kick your father into a basement. Who could respect a man like that? She patted his cheek again. I certainly couldn't. And me? Tyler choked out. What about me? You? She shrugged. You can take your half and go find your daddy in Florida. Maybe he has room in his condo. She turned away, grabbing the bottle of champagne. I'm going to take a bath, she said over her shoulder. Clean this glass up, Tyler. Someone might get hurt. She walked out of the frame. I sat in the hotel room, staring at the screen. My son stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by broken glass, his entire life dissolving around him. He was ruined. She had hollowed him out, used him to break me, and now she was discarding the husk. I felt a cold rage settle over me. It wasn't the hot anger of the argument. It was the absolute zero space. They wanted to sell the house. They wanted to optimize my assets. I closed the laptop. Okay, I whispered to the empty hotel room. Let's optimize. I slept a deep, dreamless sleep. It was the kind of rest that comes only when a difficult decision has finally been made. When you decide to amputate a limb to save the patient, the agonizing over if you should do it stops. You just focus on the saw. I woke up cold. Focused, I packed my bag in the hotel room. I didn't go back to the house. I didn't need to. I had seen enough. I drove south. I left the sprawling suburbs of Westlake, heading toward the coast. I needed salt air. I needed a horizon that didn't end at a manicured hedge. I drove to Galveston. I met a realtor at a coffee shop by the seawall. She was young, eager, and smelled of vanilla and desperation. I need a house, I told her. Today, empty. Move-in ready. We have some lovely Victorian restorations in the historic district, she suggested. No, I said. I don't want history. I want a fortress. Steel, glass, concrete. Something that can weather a hurricane. She drove me to the far end of the island. The house stood on stilts, overlooking the Gulf. It was a stark, modern cube of gray stone and impact-resistant glass. It looked like a bunker disguised as a mansion. It had no warmth. It was perfect. $5 million, the realtor said, hesitating. The owners are motivated, but... I'll take it, I said. Cash. Can we close in 48 hours? She nearly dropped her keys. I stood on the deck, the wind whipping my hair. I looked out at the gray water. I was rebuilding my infrastructure. I was preparing the recovery room. Then I picked up the phone. James, I said. Robert, he answered immediately. I have the papers drafted. Send the termination notice, I commanded. My voice was flat, devoid of the hesitation I used to feel when correcting my son. Send it by process server. When? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Robert, James sighed. This is the nuclear option. Once you serve this, there is no going back. You are evicting your son. No, James, I said, watching a seagull struggle against the wind. I am evicting the tumor. My son is just trapped in the tissue. Do it, I said. I want it in their hands while they're still drinking their coffee. The next morning, I sat on the balcony of my new cold house. The ocean roared below me, a constant, churning white noise. I opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life. The connection to the Westlake kitchen was clear. It was 8:55 a.m. Jessica was in the living room. She was wearing a white silk blouse. Looking professional, radiant, she was sitting with a woman in a navy blazer, a real estate agent. The market is hot, the agent was saying, tapping on a tablet. With this square footage and the location, we can list it $5 blocks $3 million and probably start a bidding war. Jessica smiled. It was a greedy, satisfied smile. That sounds perfect. We want a quick sale. Cash offers preferred. She was selling my house. She was selling the floors I walked on, the walls I built, the memories of my wife. She was carving it up like a butcher. Tyler was sitting in the corner armchair. He looked broken. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes red-rimmed. He hadn't shaved. He looked like a prisoner of war, listening to his captors negotiate his ransom. Tyler, honey, Jessica said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Go get us some water, would you? We're parched. Tyler stood up slowly, like an old man. Sure, he whispered. I watched him walk to the sink. My heart ached for him. But the ache was distant now. I had to let him bottom out. I had to let the system crash so I could reboot it. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was loud on the video feed, heavy, authoritative. Jessica frowned. Who is that? I didn't schedule anyone else. I'll get it, Tyler mumbled. No, sit down, Jessica snapped. She checked her reflection in the mirror, smoothed her blouse. It might be a buyer driving by. I'll handle it. She walked to the front door. I leaned closer to the screen. My pulse held steady. She opened the door. Standing there was Elias. I didn't know him, but James had described him, the process server. A giant of a man in an ill-fitting suit, holding a thick manila envelope. Jessica Anderson? Elias grunted. Yes. She put on her dazzling smile. Are you looking for the open house? We aren't quite ready yet. But you've been served, Elias said. He shoved the envelope into her chest. She instinctively grabbed it. Served? Her smile faltered. What is this? Legal notice, Elias said. He turned and walked away. Jessica stood in the doorway, confused. She looked at the envelope. Law offices of Miller and Associates. She ripped it open. I watched her face. I saw her eyes scan the first page. I saw the moment she hit clause 4.b. I saw the moment she read the words termination of lease and 60 days to vacate. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like the blood had been siphoned out of her. She staggered back.
Tyler, she shrieked.
It wasn't a call, it was a siren. Get over here. Now. Tyler ran into the hallway. The real estate agent looked uncomfortable, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure. What is it? Tyler asked. Your father, Jessica hissed, shaking the papers at him. That senile old bastard. He did something. My phone buzzed on the table next to me. It was Tyler. I picked it up. I put it on speaker. I watched his face on the screen as I heard his voice in my ear. Dad? He panicked. Dad, what did you do? Hello, Tyler, I said. My voice was calm, the voice of the surgeon telling the family the bad news. The papers, Tyler stammered. They They say we have to move the house? Move the structure. Is this a joke? It's not a joke, Tyler, I said. It's called breach of contract. You tried to take out a second mortgage, I continued, watching Jessica snatch the phone from his ear to listen in. You signed the application. You violated the lease, clause 4B. So, I'm terminating it. You have 60 days, I said, my voice cutting through the static. Move your house off my land. If you don't remove it by the deadline, the structure becomes the property of the landowner. That's me. Jessica screamed into the phone. You can't do this. We own the house. We have the deed to the building. She's right, Tyler, I said, ignoring her and speaking to my son. You own the bricks. You own the wood. You own the glass. You just don't own the ground it sits on. I paused. Good luck moving a $4.5 million mansion, Jessica. I hear it's expensive. But Dad, Tyler's voice broke. He sounded small. We're family. Family, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. That's not what Jessica said the night I left. Silence on the line. On the screen, Jessica went rigid. What? Tyler whispered. That's not what she said when she was planning your divorce with her friend on the phone, I said. Or when she told you about optimizing the assets. Check your email, son, I said. I hit send on my laptop. The file is called thetruth.p4. I watched the screen on my laptop. The connection was high definition, every pixel sharp enough to show the sweat beading on my son's forehead. Tyler held his phone in a trembling hand. The real estate agent, sensing the radioactive toxicity of the moment, began backing toward the door. I think I'll give you folks a moment, she whispered, clutching her tablet to her chest like a shield. The front door clicked shut. She was gone. Now it was just the two of them. And me, the silent observer, 300 miles away. Check your email, I had said. Tyler tapped the screen. I saw the reflection of the loading bar in his eyes. Don't open that, Jessica warned. Her voice had lost its melody. It was low, dangerous. Tyler, don't you dare. He's trying to manipulate you. It's a deep fake. It's AI. It's from his private server, Tyler muttered. He pressed play. Because of the hidden camera's microphone, I could hear the audio coming from Tyler's phone. It was tinny and small, but the words were nuclear. Pregnant? Are you crazy? Do you have any idea what that would do to my body? Tyler flinched. It was a physical reaction, as if he'd been slapped. He looked up at Jessica. She stood near the kitchen island, her knuckles white as she gripped the marble. She didn't move. She was calculating the blast radius. He'd throw his own father into a volcano if I asked him to. He's weak. He always has been. I saw the exact moment the light went out in my son's eyes. It wasn't anger. Anger is hot. This was something else. This was the gray, cold look of necrosis, the death of tissue, the death of trust. He was watching the version of himself that existed in her mind, and it was a pathetic, small thing. We sell the house. I take my money. And then we get a divorce. The video ended. The silence that followed was louder than the screaming had been. Tyler slowly lowered the phone. He placed it on the counter, very gently, as if it were a bomb that might still go off. He looked at his wife. He looked at her stomach. There is no baby, he whispered. It wasn't a question. Jessica didn't answer immediately. She straightened her posture. She smoothed the silk of her blouse. She realized the con was over. The mask didn't just slip. She took it off and threw it on the floor. No, she said. Her voice was bored. Of course not. Tyler made a sound, a choked, wet gasp. But the nursery, the painting, the vitamins. Props, Tyler, she said, rolling her eyes. It's called staging. I needed the room. I needed the environment. And I needed your father out. You monster, Tyler whispered. You made me kick him out. You made me scream at him. I didn't make you do anything, Jessica snapped. She stepped forward, her eyes flashing with contempt. I suggested it. You did it. You screamed. You slammed the table. You chose me over him because you're desperate to keep me. She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. And look where it got you. Daddy was smarter than both of us. She walked over to the counter where her purse was sitting. She slung it over her shoulder. "Where are you going?" Tyler asked, his voice cracking. "I'm leaving, Tyler," she said, checking her reflection in the microwave door. "The house is dead. The money is gone. Your father locked down the assets. There is nothing left here for me to harvest. But we're married." She stopped at the door to the garage. She looked back at him one last time. There was no pity in her eyes, only annoyance. "Talk to my lawyer," she said. And Tyler, he looked up, tears streaming down his face. "He was right," she said. "You really are weak." The door slammed. I watched on the screen. The sound of her Porsche engine roared in the driveway, then faded into the distance. Tyler stood alone in the kitchen of the $4.5 million house. He looked at the black walls of the dining room. He looked at the empty hallway. He sank to the floor. He didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He just curled into a ball on the cold tile, wrapped his arms around his knees, and wept. It was the raw, ugly crying of a child who realizes the lights have gone out and no one is coming to turn them back on. I sat on my balcony in Galveston. The sea breeze was cold on my face. I closed my laptop. I had removed the tumor. The surgery was a success, but the patient was in critical condition. I walked on the beach for hours. The wind off the Gulf was fierce. It stung my eyes and whipped sand against my trousers. I needed that stinging sensation. I needed to feel something real, something physical, to ground me after watching my family disintegrate on a computer screen. In the hospital, after a massive trauma surgery, there is a period of silence. The machines are beeping. The chest is closed, but you don't know yet if the patient will wake up. You just have to wait. When I turned my phone back on, it exploded. 50 missed calls, all from Tyler. I sat on a piece of driftwood, staring at the gray water. I pressed the call button. He picked up on the first ring. "Dad," he sobbed. The sound was wretched. It was the sound of a man who has been stripped of every layer of protection he ever had. "I saw it," he choked out. "I saw the video, all of it." "I know," I said. I kept my voice steady, the anchor in his storm. "She's gone, Dad," he whispered. "And it's not just her." "What do you mean?" I checked the accounts, the joint checking, the savings, the emergency fund. He took a ragged breath. "Zero," he said. "She drained them before she left. She transferred everything to an offshore account. I don't even know how she did it. I'm ruined," he wept. "I have nothing. No wife, no money, no baby." He paused, the realization hitting him like a second wave. "And the house?" he asked, his voice trembling. Are you really taking the house?" I looked at the horizon. This was the hardest part. The part where the surgeon has to cut away the dead tissue so the healthy tissue can grow. "Yes," I said. "But the contract stands, Tyler," I said firmly. "You breached the lease. The house defaults to me in 60 days. I am selling it, so I'm homeless," he said dully. "That's it? I'm on the street?" "No," I said. "You are still my son." I watched a tanker ship moving slowly in the distance. "I am in Galveston," I said. "I have a guest room. It is small. It has a twin bed." I heard him gasp. "You would let me come there? After what I did, after I screamed at you?" "This is not a gift, Tyler," I said, my voice turning cold as steel. "This is an opportunity, but there are conditions." "Anything," he begged. "I'll do anything. You will come here with nothing," I commanded. "You will leave the luxury car, sell it. You will need the cash for gas money. You will not live off me," I continued. "You will get a job, a real job. Manual labor, something that makes your hands bleed and your back ache. You will pay for your own food. You will pay rent. You will prove to me that you are worthy of the name Anderson. Do you understand?" "I understand," he whispered. "I'll do it, Dad. I'm packing a bag now. I'll be there in 4 hours." Tyler arrived at sunset. He didn't drive the Porsche. He drove an old rental sedan. He got out of the car carrying a single duffel bag. He looked hollowed out. He had lost 10 pounds in a week. His eyes were dark circles of exhaustion. He looked at me, standing on the concrete steps of my fortress. He didn't hug me. He didn't try to shake my hand. He just nodded, humbled and ashamed. I pointed to the guest room. Sheets are on the bed, I said. Dinner is at 6 Abram. Don't be late. The next 2 months were a blur of legal paperwork and silence. The 60 days passed. The house in Westlake, the $4.5 million monument to my success and my son's failure, defaulted to me. I didn't step foot inside it again. I hired a crew to clear it out. I sold it immediately. A tech executive from Austin bought it. $5.2 million, cash. We paid off the bank loan Tyler had taken. We paid off the credit cards Jessica had maxed out. The remaining $4.2 million didn't go to Tyler. It went back into the Anderson family trust. Locked down, safe. Tyler lived in my guest room. He didn't complain. He got a job the first week. Not as an architect. Not as a consultant. He walked to the local hardware store and asked for work. He started as a stock boy. He lifted bags of concrete. He organized lumber. He came out every night covered in dust, his hands blistered and raw. He ate dinner with me, in silence. He washed his own dishes. He went to bed early. He was rebuilding himself. One bag of concrete at a time. The summer heat broke in October. The air in Galveston turned crisp, carrying the scent of salt and cooling sand. One evening, weeks later, I stood on the balcony. The sun was setting, painting the Gulf in shades of bruised purple and deep orange. I held a cup of tea, the ceramic warm against my palms. The sliding door opened behind me. Tyler stepped out. He had just come home from the hardware store. He was wearing his work boots and a flannel shirt covered in sawdust. He looked different. The soft, doughy look of the consultant was gone. His face was leaner, tanned by the sun. His hands, once manicured, were rough and calloused. He leaned against the railing next to me. We watched the waves crash against the seawall in silence for a long time. It was a comfortable silence, the kind you don't need to fill with chatter. "Dad," he said finally. He didn't look at me. He looked at the water. "I'm sorry." He took a deep breath. "I know I've said it, but I need you to know. I'm sorry for everything. For the room, for the basement, for letting her—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "I was weak," he whispered. "I was so desperate to be loved by her that I forgot who loved me." I took a sip of tea. I let the bitterness of the leaves settle on my tongue. "I know," I said. I turned to look at him. "You were in cardiac arrest, Tyler. The heart stopped beating. The brain wasn't getting oxygen." I reached out and placed my hand on his shoulder. It felt solid, real. "But you're breathing now." He looked at me, his eyes wet. He managed a small, tired smile. "I'm breathing, but I'm broke, and I'm stocking shelves for $12 an hour." "It's honest work," I said. "There is dignity in it. I know, I don't hate it. It's simple. I move a box. The box is moved. It's real." "Good," I said, "because I have a new job for you." Tyler stiffened. "Dad, I can't take money from you." "I told you." "I didn't say I was giving you money," I interrupted. "I said I have a job." I set my cup down on the railing. "The Anderson Family Trust," I said. "It now holds $4.2 million in liquid assets from the sale of the Westlake house. It needs a manager." Tyler's eyes widened. "Me? Dad, I almost lost it all." "Exactly," I said. "You know what it feels like to almost lose everything. That makes you careful. That makes you sharp. I need someone to manage the investments, to oversee the portfolio, to ensure that when I am gone, the legacy survives. It is a job, Tyler," I said sternly. "You will be an employee of the trust. You will draw a salary, a modest one. You will continue to pay rent. And," I added, pointing a finger at him, "you will keep your job at the hardware store on weekends. You need to remember what heavy lifting feels like." Tyler stared at me. The wind ruffled his hair. For the first time in years, I saw the man I always hoped he would become. Not the boy seeking approval, but a man accepting responsibility. "I'll take it," he said. He smiled. It wasn't the nervous smile of the dinner table, it was a real smile. It reached his eyes. "I won't let you down, Dad. I know," I said. I looked back at the ocean. It took me 75 years. It cost me the house I built. It cost me the peace of my retirement. They called me a clueless old man. Jessica thought I was a bug under a microscope, something to be studied and crushed. But this old man was smart enough to read the contract, and I was strong enough to hold the scalpel when it mattered most. I didn't just save my money. I saved my son. Sometimes, the hardest cuts are the ones that save a life. If Robert's journey from the basement to the balcony, from betrayal to redemption, spoke to you, please take a moment to like this story. It helps these truths reach those who need to hear them. And for more tales of justice, resilience, and the human heart, subscribe to join us. The next chapter is waiting.